The Speaker at prayer.
Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding, we, thine unworthy servants here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsel may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the Queen, the public weal, peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Please be seated. This Honorable House now resumes its sitting. Call of the roll.
Mrs. Holness, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Holness, Dr. Clark, Dr. Chang, Mr. Montague, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Samuda, Ms. Grange, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Mallow-Fort, Dr. Tufton, Mr. McKenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Charles, Mr. Green, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Terry Long, Ms. Smith, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Main, Mr. Davis, Mr. Witter, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown-Burke, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Mr. Crawford, Miss Crawford, Miss Daly, Miss Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Miss Hamilton, Miss Hannah, Mr. Henriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Miss Lee, Mr. Miller, Miss Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Sibbles, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wright.
Thank you very much, Madam Clark. This is my first sitting of, with the House since the Christmas recess. So members, I just want to say how happy I am to be back here with you all. And I want to wish for us all as members of Parliament a productive and prosperous 2022. And I hope that this year, as parliamentarians, we will demonstrate our commitment to working together for the well-being of the people of Jamaica. And on this note, I want to stress that we intend to start the Parliament at 2 p.m. How we use our time in this House will indicate to the people who have elected us just how committed we are to serving them. So it is good to see those members who are here, and I want you to encourage everyone to be reminded that we want this to be a productive year, and in so doing, we need to start Parliament on time at 2 o'clock. I also want, on behalf of the clerk to the Houses of Parliament and the staff, to say thank you very much to all the members of this House who gave so generously to the Christmas treat for members of the staff. It was greatly appreciated. And those who have pledged and have not yet come forward, the clerk is still open to receiving your promises. But we want to thank you, and I want to say a special thank you to the Prime Minister for leading the charge. You know, Prime Minister, had you not led the charge, I'm not sure if I would be saying the thank you that I'm saying. So I really want to thank you. And the staff are particularly appreciative and asked me to make special mention for them. Thank you very much. House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Regarding statements by ministers, Madam Speaker, statements will be presented today by the Honorable Marlene Malahoo Ford, Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, as well as the Minister of National Security, Dr. the Honorable Horace Chang. Madam Speaker, on behalf of Minister Malahoo Ford, I'm apologizing for the fact that printed copies of her statement are not yet available. But if, with your permission, can she proceed with her presentation?
It will become available.
Her printed copy will come shortly, but in the interest
House
of time.
Leader, I'm not House Leader, Leader of Opposition Business, the Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, the Honorable Marlene Malahoo Ford, has a statement ready. The printed copies for yours, the members of Parliament are not here as yet. We're seeking your permission to go ahead. But I noticed that you are almost alone, so I'm hoping you will. Almost. I said you have very important people with you. But I'm saying to you, you seem almost alone. Would you? And I wonder if you would be gracious enough to allow the minister in her maiden speech, in her new capacity, to go right ahead.
Madam Speaker, first of all, let me welcome you back to your substantive post, back for the new year. Having joined in the welcome previously on another occasion to the rest of the members, I just want to welcome you back. And to first of all, to give you our assurance on the opposition side that we are indeed committed, not only to cooperation, but to demonstrate that with the timely start of the Parliament. And I think the example has been set, and I believe it's just a matter of people getting accustomed to the new hours before they'll be here. But I expect that my full team will be here very shortly, and I'm not wishing to detain the Minister of Legal and Constitutional Reform, we will proceed as per normal, Madam Speaker.
Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, I invite you to take the floor.
Madam Speaker, thank you for your graciousness. Thanks also to the Leader of Opposition Business. The printed copy will become available in short order. Madam Speaker, I cannot describe how elated I am to make this presentation on the day when the Parliament has started promptly at 2 o'clock. Madam Speaker, on January 10, 2022, Prime Minister, the Most Honourable Andrew Holness, announced the creation of the new ministry Minister. Prime Minister, thank you for the confidence you have reposed in me to head this new ministry. Mr. Wayne Robinson, Chief Technical Officer in the Office of the Prime Minister, has been assigned Permanent Secretary. This ministerial statement, Madam Speaker, is intended to do three things. Firstly, to advise this Honourable House of the assigned subjects and departments at this time. Secondly, to inform of the context in which this ministry has been created. And thirdly, to indicate how it is intended that this ministry will be operationalized. Madam Speaker, there are now 4 subjects and 3 departments. The assigned subjects are legal reform, constitutional reform, legal education, and protection of human rights. The departments are the Office of the Chief Parliamentary Counsel, the Office of the Parliamentary Counsel, Legal Reform Department, the Law Revision Secretariat, and the Office of the Public Defender also falls within the portfolio by virtue of the assignment of the subject matter of protection of human rights. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs is established to take charge of and give focused attention to the Government of Jamaica's legislative agenda and its legal and constitutional reform aspirations. The creation may be regarded as the most serious attempt by any head of government to revisit holistically the legal and constitutional infrastructure of the Jamaican nation-state since the last time this work was set before us was on the cusp and in the immediate aftermath of nationhood. And that is some 60 years ago. Madam Speaker, the culmination of the rewrite of Chapter 3 of the Constitution of Jamaica with the passage of the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedom over a decade ago has been the closest we have come to any fundamental constitutional reform since independence. That monumental achievement should have been followed by a comprehensive review of the laws of Jamaica to make them compliant with the Charter, given its binding nature and the significant narrowing of the Savings Clause. Yet, Madam Speaker, this comprehensive review remains undone, leaving the legal architecture in an unsatisfactory state. Even though some work on the host of 19th century laws on our books now has commenced. Madam Speaker, Jamaica's colonial past has left us with very mixed views about the extent and exercise of state power. The sad reality is that so many Jamaicans, so many of our people have in the past experienced or witnessed the oppressive hand of the state. Not only are their tales of negative first experience with the law carried in the news, but they are told across generations in families and communities. And they are also recorded in our law reports. Many cases have been brought against the state, successfully so. The lessons are still being learned to help us avoid the mistakes of the past. Madam Speaker, even though many positive changes have been made over time through legislative and other processes to improve how the state discharges its responsibility to the people, much distrust lingers. And this lingering distrust is often accompanied by cynicism in many quarters about the real needs of the state to effectively enable the government to appropriately respond to nefarious acts that threaten or undermine its legitimacy. Madam Speaker, as you know, given that you are a lawyer by profession, the constitutional power entrusted to the Parliament to make laws is so entrusted for the purposes of peace, order, and good government. It is set out in Section 48(1) of the Constitution of Jamaica. The proper exercise of this power requires very focused attention inside the Parliament as well as outside of it, where important related decisions are taken about the content of our laws. This move by Prime Minister Holness reflects the priority he places on working more earnestly to transform Jamaica into a peaceful, law-abiding nation with government headed by him, leading by example. Madam Speaker, the three major legal departments of this new ministry, the three major legal departments of the government, the LRD, the Law Reform Department, the Office of the Parliamentary Counsel, and the Attorney General's Chambers, are proximately involved in the lawmaking process. And they have been bearing the brunt of the workload. They have been accused of not turning over the work fast enough to ensure a speedier passage of laws. Do you know, Madam Speaker, that is not the full picture. Although the public, the Parliament, and ministers of government may be familiar with the Legal Reform Department through the technical support it provides to joint select committees of the Parliament, the support it provides to the Legislation Committee of Cabinet and the Cabinet itself. The Law Reform Department's mandate is actually to methodically examine and review constantly the laws of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, this is an audit function to ascertain adequacy and relevance of the laws, and then in turn to refer to the policymakers those laws in need of update by way of amendment, repeal, and/or replacement. Where the policymakers themselves propose new laws, they are supposed to submit the policies and supporting documents to the Legal Reform Department for critical evaluation, for this department to determine, among other things, whether the subject matter of a proposed law is already provided for in existing laws, or whether existing laws go far enough. They also must consider the role of other laws, which are often referred to as companion legislations, that may fall within or outside the particular ministry proposing a new law. Madam Speaker, the department is also required to consider whether the proposal is constitutional, although it is the Attorney General's chambers outside of the courts which ultimately opines on the constitutionality of any proposal. So it means, therefore, that policies and supporting documents on legal and constitutional issues may arise and may require work, and it has to go through the different planks. Currently, Madam Speaker, the submission of policy documents is an exception rather than the norm, and this puts the Legal Reform Department in a reactionary role, which is simply not good. We also know that for a proper audit to be done, the auditor needs all the records. And this is where law revision comes in. Madam Speaker, the undesirable status quo has been crying out for urgent attention, and the Prime Minister has responded with this new ministry. The Law Revision Act provides for functions of law revision to be carried out by law commissioners. However, Madam Speaker, the entire system will have to be completely revamped, bringing the statute law commissioners involved in the day-to-day task of law revision, starting with a reconceptualization of the enabling law. Specific knowledge, skill sets, and competency levels are required to revise laws, and the system must be designed and resourced to make it fit for purpose. We must reduce the time lag between enactment and inclusion in the revised laws of Jamaica to ensure that the information provided, whether online or elsewhere, is up to date and accurate. Madam Speaker, I was dismayed to learn that even our judges have fallen into error by relying on outdated publications. I gather that we are now up to 2017 laws, though 2018 have been prepared in the revision work. Madam Speaker, for anyone who has to use the laws of Jamaica, it is like going through a maze to ascertain the complete and accurate state of the law on any given subject matter. And so, Madam Speaker, we must revisit how laws are actually revised. Currently, and this is by way of example, the long title, the memorandum of objects, and transitional provisions are not included in the revised laws. Neither do the revised laws indicate which provisions have been repealed, and the renumbering of sections and subsections is just out of whack. Madam Speaker, the work is clearly cut out for this new ministry.
Just before you continue, Leader of Opposition Business has asked, have you any idea whether or not, because they would like to ask some questions, whether or not your speech, your presentation this afternoon is on its way? Because they would, or could it be sent by email?
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
email,
Yes.
right, that would be okay. Thank you, Minister.
So, Madam Speaker, the work is clearly cut out for this new ministry, and the three major departments of government have been struggling with the legislative agenda over the years. Now that legal services have been re-centralized under the Office of the Attorney General, legal service units, what we call the LSUs, within the ministries will take on a more prominent role in conjunction with the policy units. All ministries, Madam Speaker, will be required to work within settled time frame, even and especially when matters are sensitive. The current practice, where as deadlines approach, the matters are then launched with the OCP or the LRD or the AGC, not leaving those departments, especially the OCP, enough time to do their share of the work, when the MDAs had already maximized their time in their units, will not be carried forward. The time frame required to, among other things, settle policy issues, answer questions, get approvals, prepare drafting instructions, and the drafts themselves will be set. It is simply intolerable, Madam Speaker, for us to work without set timelines. No longer will instructing officers be allowed to put in the minimum, having taken the maximum time, and then create a crisis in the lawmaking process. Madam Speaker, the Office of Parliamentary Counsel is particularly affected by the current chaos because they are at the end of the production chain if we are to view the legislative process as a production chain. The assessment shows that from the time the throne speech is delivered, regrettably, ministries meander, and then near the end of the legislative year, they send the instructions, as if only to say that instructions have been issued. Then the impression is given that the matters have been with the OCP forever, when the truth is that sufficient time was not given to produce the drafts. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister has assessed the situation and has concluded that what currently obtains is simply not good enough. It is certainly not conducive to producing quality work. And whether the approach has been deliberate, for example, when questions are asked and the answers are forthcoming, or not, what has resulted is a pressure cooker situation which minimizes time for thorough assessment of issues and quality work. Madam Speaker, ministers and ministries need not dismay. The appropriate training will be provided, and that is why legal education is one of the assigned subject matters. Traditionally, legal education is viewed as matters dealing with the law school and the Council of Legal Education. But the Prime Minister's assessment of the need for intergovernment education on the laws and processes has resulted in an attempt to rework government for better outcomes. Madam Speaker, each ministry must designate a responsible officer for sending instructions, who should be a legal officer working with the policy officials. It stands to reason, Madam Speaker, that policy officials who work without legal officers cannot answer legal questions, and legal officers who work without the policy officials cannot answer policy questions. So part of the work will be a clarifying of the responsibility and a revising of the pace of the work. Madam Speaker, already consultations have begun with the ministry as we approach the end of this year and the start of the new year. And I'm pleased to advise the House that I have already met with all of the responsible personnel in the new ministry, and the consultation with other ministries have commenced in the week since creation of the ministry. Madam Speaker, to wrap this first presentation, I should like to advise that the work to be done by the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs will cross-cut all of government in order to provide specialist guidance and assistance to each ministry and its departments, agencies, and other bodies by extension, with the steps to be taken to uphold and defend the Constitution and the laws of Jamaica in the conscientious and impartial discharge of portfolio responsibilities to the people of Jamaica. This work, Madam Speaker, is also designed to help reset the stage to move Jamaica from a state of unacceptable lawlessness to one of desired lawfulness. Madam Speaker, I want all Jamaicans at home and abroad to know that the tasks that will flow from the work will require input from practically everyone, especially our most capable and experienced minds. The Prime Minister is aware that there are many questions to answer, and in time we will provide answers. Right now we ask that we allow the work to evolve, because only then will the benefits become evident. Madam Speaker, much has been given to this Jamaica Labour Party administration, led by the Most Honourable Andrew Michael Holness. And we know that much is expected from it. It is said, Madam Speaker, that the law of great expectations is a powerful motivator. And when expectations rise, we are inclined to rise with them. May this be the tide on which we all rise. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Madam Speaker, I'm asking kindly if you would agree for the questions. The questions as follow-up to Minister Ford's presentation be deferred until the printed copy is circulated. And you will go ahead? Okay.
Minister, I have heard the explanation of the rationale for the new ministry and the subjects and the areas that the ministry would cover, and I have no argument with that. My concern, however, is that we seem to be building bureaucracy on bureaucracy, because many of those functions existed under the Ministry of Justice or under the Attorney General's Department. We're now creating a new structure which will involve a permanent secretary, staff, etc. And while I have no issue with the functions, I would question whether there is a need for an entirely new ministry to undertake the activities that the minister just outlined. That's really my issue. And I believe in a difficult time which the country is in, where our economy has not fully recovered from COVID, that we are adding expenses on expenses where those functions could have been executed somewhere else. There'll have to be, I don't know the physical location of the new ministry, but you're talking about building, staff, etc., which just adds to the overall cost of government and doing business. So that is really my concern with the new ministry that has been established and how it would function. And it leads me to question given the breadth of the areas under this new ministry, I wonder what the Minister of Justice will be left to do, given all of the things that this new ministry is now doing.
Madam Speaker, all the best to you for the new year. Yeah. Madam Speaker, there's no doubt that Jamaica has been suffering, I think, from the very slow pace at which important legislation is being developed. We have seen, for example, situations where urgent pieces of legislation have dragged on interminably before coming to Parliament. I can think of one, for example, off the bat, the Enhanced Security Measures legislation, which has been in discussion for over 2 years, still hasn't come here. At a time when the country is crying out for an effective response to the wave of murders in the country. So something had to be done. You know, as a former Minister of Justice, I can say that the functions of managing the legislative program of the government is a major part of the work of the Minister of Justice. Certainly in my time it was. It took up a lot of effort and time. It was something I enjoyed. And it involved getting in the trenches with the personnel, the officers from the Office of the Parliamentary Council, the Attorney General's Chambers, the Legal Reform Department, and really driving the legislation to the point where it could come to Parliament. You know, we have a Firearms Act where we've been waiting on for ages as well. You know, we would love to see a quick review and update. Well, the review has been done of the ZOZA legislation, which was experimental when it was passed. There's been some experience with it now. And it is no doubt going to be a major tool of the national security apparatus going forward. So the amendments which have been discussed and agreed at the Joint Select Committee need to be implemented fast. You know, the anti-gang legislation as well, the updates of that. So, and there's so many things that one can think of that are just taking far too long. So, you know, Minister Chuck has been relieved of those functions, no doubt much to his relief. And the former Attorney General will now bat in that arena. I wish her well. I hope we will see a much improved performance in this very important area. There's no excuses for the poor performance. It has just been a sad indictment on the capacity of this government to deliver effective governance to the country, and we need to see a rapid and clear improvement in the performance in this area. As my colleague from Southeast St. Andrew has said, it does involve creating an additional ministry to do things which were quite adequately managed in the past within the Ministry of Justice and its agencies and departments. So that is the cost that we must bear as taxpayers for this. Nevertheless, if in the end it results in improved legislative performance by the government, you know, it will be a good thing on a net basis, because that is absolutely critical to the country addressing some of the many challenges that it has. So I close by wishing the new minister good luck in her new position. We know there's a new Attorney General. He's not sitting in Parliament. That's, to my mind, unfortunate, because there are issues which come up in Parliament, especially when you talk about constitutional reform and other matters, where having the Attorney General present is an important part of the accountability function within governance in the country. He's a political appointee, and he occupies a very central role in the decision-making of the government. And there must be due accountability by having a person like that sitting in Parliament. It's not a mandatory requirement by any means, we know that. But I think it is a best practice which ought to be followed. So, Madam Speaker, we look forward to seeing the output of the new ministry, which hopefully will result in parliamentarians having to also deal with more work, more legislative work, which is what is our primary purpose. So nobody should have any complaints about that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I have to observe that even now as we await the speech. That in an effort to cooperate, I said, fine, let's proceed. Normally, we know what the procedure is. But a good half an hour, 45 minutes after, we have not seen the speech. Now, I've heard the minister made a comment to which I'd like to refer, but in the absence of the document to make sure that in fact, that is what she did say. I'm really constrained, I feel constrained not to reference it unless I have the document at hand. So really, we really ought to, if we're going to work together in good faith, because she could have stood down and let the Minister of National Security proceed, and when the document comes, she starts. But nevertheless, I listened and I heard, and I'd like to ask the Minister, did I understand you correctly to say that there are many questions to be answered, but that we should await to see how the ministry evolve and the work of the ministry evolve? Because if that were the case, I think the questions already started, because we would want to know what is the basis on which this decision was taken and what are some of the critical issues that it will confront. So I'm hoping that's not what you said, but that's what I heard. And if you could confirm that's what you did say in the absence of the statement itself.
Madam Speaker, the strangest of thing has happened. The script has disappeared from... So it was to be emailed over. And the strangest... just a minute.
I too want to apologize to you on behalf of the minister, and in the interest of being productive on time, what I would ask us to do is to allow the House Leader to direct us to the Minister of National Security, and then we can return to the issue at hand. House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this time, the Minister of National Security will make a statement to Parliament on the zones of special operations, parade gardens.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
On the public notice.
As is required under legislation, a short statement on the zone of special operation, the parade gardens area, declared us last weekend. I think on the agenda, the issue of the amendments done by the Joint Select Committee will be taken next week. There was some mix-up, but we'll get it done next week. It shouldn't be too difficult. Madam Speaker, the Kingston Central Police Division recorded some 79 homicides for 2021, an increase of some 55% when compared to the corresponding period of 2020. Ongoing violence and its impact on the division has extended to several communities, to include the downtown business district, the location of critical government institutions, and various activities crucial to the conduct of the country's business. The Parade Gardens Committee is one of the 16 committees that fall within the downtown development area that has been prioritized for immediate intervention of some. Without question, the level of violence in this community of approximately 3,000 residents is having significant impact on the state of the being of the residents, and children in particular. Where gunshots are normal at nights, individuals, kids are having a challenge with doing their homework, and the conduct normal business activity throughout the day. In the immediate district itself, they have lost some 16 lives in 2021 at the hands of murderous criminals. Parade Gardens is among the top 10 communities nationally with the highest number of homicides. This has, of course, raised the level of concern for the government and the security forces, which thought prudent to ask that the government declare a zone of special operations within that community. Madam Speaker, the driving factors are well known. Gang warfare compounded by the possession of illegal firearms and inability to resolve conflicts peacefully. Socioeconomic and urban decay over time has contributed to the lack of community development, which ranks this community among the most vulnerable in Jamaica, as observed by the research done by the Planning Institute of Jamaica. A baseline study of the community in June 2020 indicates that Parade Gardens share the demographic characteristics associated with the most vulnerable and volatile communities in the country, having just over half its population, 51.3%, aged 30 and under, and associated with significant urban decay characterized by low performance in education facilities and high unemployment rate. This places this community at extremely high risk for significant violence. This is based on the fact that children, or boys in particular, are among the most vulnerable because they are targeted for gang recruitment and also attending schools, etc., performing at a very low level within this area. High levels of unemployment and low educational attainment have further stifled economic and social advancements of many residents. Like many other challenged communities, Parade Gardens has benefited from a number of social intervention programs over the years, yet with little to show for it. Through the implementation of the clear hold and build strategy of the zones of special operation, we will provide the community with a respite from violence and create an environment for long-term development. The objective is to save lives in the short term, restore order, and pursue transformative action in the medium term. Over the next 60 days, residents can look forward to further intensified security operations and increased community engagement by security personnel. This as they pursue strong community partnership in ridding the area of violence producers. Madam Speaker, zones of special operations do not end in 60 days. They are subject to Parliament review every 60 days to ensure that the work progresses as planned through the hold and build phases. These periodic reviews facilitate transparency. It is the means by which the residents of Parade Gardens can hold the government accountable for the requisite social investment and operational work to be carried out as planned. The amendments, in fact, in view of this amendment proposed in the Joint Select Parliamentary Committee, will see after the first 60 days the review will be done on a 6-monthly basis rather than every 60 days. We now have some 7 zones, I think. I will have, 7 zones with the declaration of the Westmoreland zone at this time. So it will still be subject to Parliament review, but a 6-month period will allow for evaluation of the work being done, and we have the agreement of all members on this particular item. I hope to bring the Joint Select Committee report, which has been laid in the House from September, to debate it next week and take it through. It's not an area of, it's not a contentious review, so we should get it done during this parliamentary year. Madam Speaker, the residents of Parade Gardens are tired of the violence, and the country is deeply concerned by some level of the brutality that takes place in this area. Children have been murdered. Their desire is to live free of fear, improve their social standing, and raise their children in a peaceful environment. The government is implementing the measure required to restore peace and good order to Parade Gardens. I had the privilege of visiting myself on occasion, and I was not only struck by the organization of the community, which is one of the more mature communities in the corporate area, but what was happening, Madam Speaker, in the country of it, there are individuals living in 2 streets, well-organized streets downtown, in a grid, and the house on one side is adjoining at the back the other house. And individuals are walking out the front gate of this house, down the road, and kill somebody from the house at the back. It's an absolute anarchic situation, and we have taken some steps to begin the process. Clearly, in the long term, the hold and build will have to operate with a significant social investment to change not only create peace, but to change attitude and bring about significant transformation, restoring hope, a sense of value, and opportunity to the young men, in particular, and to the entire population of this community. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Madam Speaker,
Central Kingston borders my own constituency, and I know the residents welcome the implementation of a ZOSO. My question would be the rationale for the specific geographic area that was chosen, because there are some other areas very close to parade gardens which were not included in the ZOSO, which have been the subject of intense violence as well, and which would benefit from the ZOSO, and which I know those residents were looking forward to being included in the ZOSO. So I would like the Minister to provide a rationale for the very specific geographic area chosen. Central Kingston geographically is a relatively small constituency, and so I just wanted to know why it didn't include some other areas where there have been significant bouts of violence over the last year or so.
Madam Speaker, I just want to endorse that particular question. You know, the communities of Spoilers and Midtown, which are small communities just on the other side of East Queen Street from the Parade Gardens areas, are very much embroiled in the gang warfare that has been afflicting that area generally. And the exclusion of those two communities, one of which I believe is the headquarters for one of the two main gangs involved in the conflict, and Midtown, Spoilers and Midtown. I think that doesn't really, to me, is not logical. So I would have liked to have seen those areas included. And we're not talking about a big space. It's a small space to talk. I'm familiar with it. It is not a big space, but it is very much part of the problem. So I brought this to the attention of the Commissioner of Police and the Chief of Defence Staff when I heard the announcements, because it was brought to my attention by our caretaker for the constituency. So I'd like you to look into that. But the broader point really, Minister, is that this ZOSO is welcomed by the residents. It is something that we have been calling for months and months because of the high level of violence in a very small location, which is the communities involved here, and the number of deaths that have resulted from that. And we feel that, given the constitutional concerns that we have, it is the ZOSO which is a mechanism that is best designed to address bringing hotspots that where violent crime is out of control, under control. We appreciate the social investment aspect of it, which is an important aspect, comes with expenditures, but we can pace those expenditures to fit within our fiscal capacities. But we should never deprive the residents of the benefit of the law enforcement aspects of a zone of special operations because we don't want to have to invest the money in whatever it may be, birth certificates, removing zinc fences, etc., the kind of things that we see in the reports that come to Parliament as being done within these ZOSO areas. I think the ZOSO tool is a very important tool. I think it's a tool which needs to be deployed more and needs to be the primary way in which we address situations where communities are embroiled in conflict and where there's a lack of other interventions, unfortunately, to try and bring them under control. You know, whether it be the peace management initiative, which I believe ought to be strengthened and adequately resourced. It has delivered results in certain parts of Jamaica, and I think it can do a lot more. And of course, we are also believers in the kind of social programs that can reorient youths away from the path of badness towards more productive citizenship by interventions that are targeted at ensuring that they have hope, that they have prospects, and this needs to be a holistic approach involving remedial education, mentorship, skills training, life skills training, financial literacy, and so on. So the solution to these issues must be multifaceted, but the right to life is critical, and we can't, I think, hold back on using this tool because of concerns about the expense of the social investment aspects of it. I think that is just bad policy and frankly, illogical. So I see that you've started to use them a bit more. You have 2 this year, Central Kingston and now parts of Westmoreland. I'm not even sure exactly what the Sablamar area, parts of the Sablamar area. And I know that persons in Westmoreland are saying there are many other parts that need similar treatment. So I would urge the government to go ahead and use the ZOZO tool effectively and ensure that we can try and bring security back under control in the country. I think we've had over 70 murders in this year already. It is an unacceptable result, and the tools exist to bring it under control without violating the Constitution. There was another case, as we know, there's a case where on a habeas corpus application arising out of one of the earlier states of emergency, the court had indicated its concerns with the use and parameters of the state of emergency, and then there has been a constitutional motion which was heard by the Constitutional Court in December, and we await the outcome of that. Madam Speaker, we have a little penny section talk over there, Just cool him out. So we're awaiting the ruling in that case to see whether it will provide any further direction for going forward. But in the meantime, we can use the tools that we have more effectively, and I believe the ZOZO, which was designed and passed by the government here with input from us in Parliament, but we feel that it is an important part of the solution in communities like the ones that we have been discussing today, and I would urge the government to use it accordingly. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wanted, every time we come to Parliament with the zones of special operations, we have this kind of conversation. Minister, by now, I'm sure you are aware, and many Jamaicans too, that on this side, we support ZOZOs. I believe, though, it may be important to always make the distinction between zones of special operations and the state of emergency, public emergency. I say that because I have seen others in the public domain try to make what some might call mischief because of the positions we have taken in Parliament. I raise it because I believe you will agree with me, Minister, that a national partnership is required if we are to deal with the situation of crime that we have across the country, and in particular along that southern side. I therefore want to ask you, Minister, whether or not you believe that it is important for us to always call out those individuals, whoever they are, who make statements that inflame others and who make statements that really threaten to erode the confidence of the kind of partnership that we are building. Whether they say it in church, on the political platform, or whatever. Because I believe, Minister, that it is unfortunate when any of us or others could make it seem that there are some of us who take the decisions we do here because we don't want to stop crime. And every time someone says that, and also depending on where they are in terms of the hierarchy in the country, it sends the wrong signal. So I'm calling on you and I'm asking you whether or not you believe that those utterances are also important in keeping that national partnership. Minister, many days I have been coming here, and as I come here, I have met along the way a number of individuals, some women in particular, who had been demonstrating for quite some time. You would have seen some of them as well, including the caretaker for Central Kingston, who has really been carrying it along with some ladies in particular. I stopped, especially when you see a group of women really making the call. So I know that they are pleased and others have spoken on their behalf. I think this is an opportunity, Minister, for the civic leaders, the political leaders, the community leaders to come together. And I don't think that we can overemphasize the opportunities that are created when they come together to discuss the development of their community. So I'm very pleased to be able to add my voice today around that. When we look at whatever means to deal with the issue of crime and violence, I think we also need to look at how much a part of our culture of badness that is. And therefore, Minister, when in other spaces and on other occasions we laud the gods that are there, bro or otherwise, I think we need to understand the disservice we do to our people. Thank you.
Minister, I think you're fully aware of the concerns I've expressed continually about the similar elevated conditions that exist in many other parts of the corporate area and more general, and New Haven in particular. And I have been, even as I welcome the move in Parade Garden and in Westmoreland, the question arises then, what really are the criteria for triggering these also? I'm really unclear, because I've seen, as I've said, similar condition existing elsewhere, elevated levels of crime and deteriorating social conditions, and yet we are just told when we ask, well, no, it's not, we don't have the resources. We don't have the resources. I've also asked for interim other measures, so that even if we're not talking about Zozo and Soso, that we have other kinds of intervention so that we don't move from communities that are on the edge into community that fall into that category, so that the line between where we are and then the triggering of a Zozo, there's nothing in between. There's nothing in between. And so, Minister, I have to ask again that is it simply that we wait until we get to this level of crime like the 77 in Parade Garden, the increase in the number of murders, before we do something in these communities? It's crying out for intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me thank the members for their support on that side. And at this point, I say, in part to respond to the member from Southwest St. Andrew, the government appreciates the support on the issues of special operation, which reflects the mood of the entire House and all representatives to bring some of the order to certain areas. But the zone of special operation indicated for that particular piece of legislation designed to deal with not only crime and violence and development of the community. In fact, this came out, you should understand, Madam Speaker, that it's not the first time governments have attempted to intervene in some of these communities. And I've gone over and over, research shows how much was spent in social intervention. But there's a particular program, inner city basic services program, which was brought into some 14 urban districts in Jamaica and did significant work on infrastructure in particular, in fact, largely in the corporate area and St. James, which were then, at that time, the two most challenging parishes for it. Out of those areas, it was then that the Planning Institute of Jamaica identified under its community renewal program some 100 districts, which stretch across largely St. James, St. Catherine, and the corporate area. There were the 100 communities. And within that 100 communities, some 20, which now counts about 25, as section of Clarendon, and since Westmont has been brought to the picture, as communities that are most volatile and at greatest risk for high levels of violence and social dysfunction and need extraordinary measures to restore some level of community normalcy in these communities. I mentioned the city-based service program, which I had the experience of working with in one community in St. James, Flanker in particular. And as I said, extensive high-quality work is done in infrastructure. What missing from it was the challenge of solid security foundation. In other words, to achieve transformation, we have to have a safe space. The community must feel safe. They must feel they can conduct their lives in a normal way. Go to the shop in the evening, go to prayer meeting for the older people in the midweek, and come home at 9, 10, or 11 and feel safe walking in their community. So we had significant work done. I don't have the list of them, some 14 communities across Jamaica, and we did not see the impact on reduction in criminal activity. Some of these areas had the other intervention programs working. And I'm happy to hear the member from South Central speak about certain other activities, because whatever I get over and over, the projects which were done were well-intentioned, but you cannot have transformative action parallel to government in these communities. The problem in these communities are deep-seated and requires fundamental change in the quality of public service the people receive if we're going to restore hope and maintain peace and safety. So education, public health, the social security efforts are crucial. And this is why the zone of special approach was brought in, and much of the investment, much more in fact investment, that normally go to social intervention programs, and very little additional staffing, because a lot of these social intervention programs became a source of employment for social workers. We may need them as we evaluate going forward, but as I said, in some of the programs I had to examine, in one very significant case, near 70% of the financing went to staffing and consultants. So what should have been a major impact in the press communities, restoring hope and giving quality services, was spent really in creating employment. Nothing wrong in generating employment. It was for the wrong personnel, quite frankly. The people who needed the money did not get the benefit. And the government's entire focus on, I prefer to use the term, social investment, is designed to coordinate and ensure the money being spent, what is there already in terms of what is being done in education, in public health, in the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, is organized and focused and reach those who are in need. That we can look again that in spite of intervention.
Dr. Chang, the Minister of National Security is on his feet and he's addressing matters that concern both sides of the island. Questions have been asked. If you have asked the question and you wish to hear the answer, I'm going to ask you, please, to allow him to be heard in silence. There's really a heavy murmur on both sides of the aisle.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, because I think the matter affects every single member. Almost every member of this House would like to have a Zosa in the current mood. And I need to explain to both the House and the wider public the government's approach to social investment, which is a fundamental shift and is being organized so. The Citizens Business Group is all permanent sectors. We coordinate social investment, ensure that individuals who are deserving are part of it. For on many occasions, there are members of the House who would come and complain that the Ministerial Labour and Social Security visit a community, usually whether it is an area of urban decay or an area of squatting, and they tell you that they went and see a very poor family, but because the family have a old fridge that they get from someone they work for, and they maybe have a second-hand bed too, which they get from them, and they got some zinc sheet and they're not leaking. This social worker come back and say, this one don't need it. And some of those who is far more, less deserving receive. We have to ensure that the government's expenditure in the social area reaches the people who want. That's the first thing we have to do in terms of the expenditures out there. You should not have individuals living under plastic and kids that are receiving who are not on part in those situations. So that's the first focus of government social investment, to make sure what we are doing is spent appropriately and properly. And then in these challenge communities, we add to that, because as I said, there's some 125 communities throughout Jamaica. The zone of special operations, in its broader sense, is to focus on about 25 of those. My concern, Madam Speaker, is that while the zone of special operations is welcome and desirable and represent on the government effort to begin to address the issues in these communities, the zone of special operation is not a purely security operation. They are not going to debate on the status of public emergency, because there are issues before the court, but as a security operation. And in many of these communities, you first need a security operation. And we cannot afford to dilute the zone of special operations to become a purely security operation. When a zone of special operations is declared, the population in that area not only feel better for the day that the clear comes in, but their hope is restored, that work will be done to improve their lives over time. The first 60 days is to see the clear, but we have kept, I think, Mount Salem is now going, what, nearly over 2 years. The member of Parliament, Mount Salem is going, what, 2 years now? Just over 2 years. We have had significant improvement, and it's approaching a stage where, with the completion of the police station and the rehabilitation of the Mount Salem school and the ministry examining the kind of program available and significant increase in the availability of training for the 15 to 30 around Montego Bay through both the Jamaica Military Technical Institute and two hard facilities, Granville and Glendevon, and along with still spaces in the Kenilworth and the Falmouth BTDI, we will begin to break the back of significant crime in that area. Of course, even a few members can still be a problem, and some of the issues in that region is a little bit different from the urban cooperative, the Southern Crescent versus the tri-parish area. Advanced credit fraud and scamming is a bigger problem in those areas. That means more money, and it's therefore hard to break some of the habits. But the work will, in fact, provide opportunity for those young men who want to live a life of normalcy. So I think the issue, Madam Speaker, we have no quarrel with the request, but I said I think government would have to give, cannot afford to destroy the messaging of those. We may need something else. I said that was what the state of public emergency is, but I will not get into that debate now. It cannot be a replacement. In addition to that, when you approach it with this kind of intense security and social investment, the demands not only in manpower, but in finances there. And it takes some time and planning to get not only the budget, but to have the required manpower who can administer the funding appropriately and with integrity. There are some bodies which have been added in scene. In most of these years now we have what we call community liaison workers who work to coordinate individuals' reach to the social services in the community. They are essentially community social workers, but I don't think the professionals like to use the term social workers. So we call them community liaison officers. Education too is investing in technical truancy officers, individuals who will go house to house, find individuals to bring them out. We coordinate with them at that level, as well as the community health aid, the public health sector. So we can get coordination of all the agents involved in reaching the challenged people in these communities. It takes a little while to get it all going. We have at the national level it's working. At the local level it always takes time to break the silos and get them going. So it's working, and we have to manage them in a timely manner. And that, Mr. Speaker, is why it is not the intention of the government to dilute the zones of special operation. We want to expand them as budget allows and hopefully reach all the communities. Now, the final comment is the Minister speaks of how the boundaries are selected. The National Security team examined not only the immediate situation. Yes, you get a trigger. The murder went up down in Savannah dramatically, and we had a couple of brutal killings in central Kingston. I think 2 children were involved, and the chiefs and their teams examined the immediate situation, which draws the attention there for obvious reasons, and then they look at the historical trend. And you tend to go where you think you have a nexus of gangsterism, but in place of other areas. For example, when they came to Norwood, it's only a piece of Norwood, about a third of the community, but that's where the 2 gangs fighting were based. And since they went in there and disrupted, you have had pretty much peace around here. You have had no more murders. They were having them at least a 1 week situation in that little nexus where 2 streets beside each other, back to back. And that's where the killing was. So that came under the umbrella of the zone of special operation. Is what's 5,000 families out of about 15,000 families that are affected. But once we got that under control, the situation is stable. And that is really the objective of the zone of spirit, is to take the nucleus where it is. The areas mentioned, and I know my colleague from Western St. is concerned, and I share his concern of the problem in that part of his constituency. And there are another 20 or so communities in Jamaica which have similar problems, as well as a further 100 and so that are having, if not as severe, similar issues. And the government has them on the radar, but we have to proceed both at the rate at which we have the funding and the personnel to execute efficiently. The security issue cannot always wait on that. When people are being killed, we need special security measures. And that's the issue. And the zone is not strictly that area. The police officers continue to execute increased cordon searches, increase curfews, increase special operations. Somewhere like Westmoreland, as I said down there, as a parish, Westmoreland need a state of public emergency. We have 7 major districts in Constitution. The 2 big gangs, Darling Street and Dexter Street, are based downtown Savannah. So we hope by disrupting their headquarters, we are confident we'll get not only peace in the urban center of Savannah, which is a sensitive area, but will reduce the homicides. But the truth is that we have gangs operating in Grange Hill, Witton, White House, Little London, and Negril. It is not feasible to establish a zone to cover the whole parish. And we have to look at other activities that are going there. We have had effect, but the police have had to increase the numbers in Savannah, as well in both the geographic division and the special operating teams. And we have had some impact, but we have to understand that it is not suitable for a zone to cover a parish. That's the reality, and we depend on the security forces to analyze and identify where we think is the axis of the gang activity and deal with that area. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following. Special investigation conducted by the report on the special investigation conducted by the Integrity Commission of Jamaica into the circumstances which led to the award and implementation of a contract by Turbo Pay Limited in relation to the upgrade of payroll software at the Jamaica Fire Brigade. Report of special investigation conducted by the Integrity Commission of Jamaica concerning allegations of impropriety and irregularity in the installation of a car charging facility at the St. Anne Municipal Corporation. Certified appropriation account head 26,022 for the police department for the year 2012 to 2017.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally. questions and answers to questions.
Madam Speaker, at the expiration of 21 days, I intend to ask the Minister of Tourism the following questions tabled in my name. I would also like to, I know the Minister of Finance is going to be answering some questions tabled in my name from late last year.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the expiration of 21 days, I will ask the Honourable Minister of Education and Youth the following question in my name.
Minister Clark.
Madam Speaker, I rise to respond to question 14 posed by the member from South East St. Andrew. Question 1. Would the Minister indicate the revenue earned by the Government of Jamaica from the profit-sharing regime with Noranda Bauxite Partners II during the relevant period from 2018 to 2021? Madam Speaker, in 2018, the Government of Jamaica entered into an establishment agreement with New Day Aluminium Jamaica Limited, hereinafter referred to as New Day, which contained a profit-sharing regime that replaced the bauxite levy regime previously applicable. New Day Aluminium were the owners of Noranda Bauxite Partners II, which operated the St. Anne Bauxite Company and the Gramercy Aluminum Refinery in Louisiana, the United States. This establishment agreement was pursuant to a binding letter of intent entered into by the parties in 2016. The profit-sharing arrangement gave the Government of Jamaica the contractual right to receive a repayment based on the greater of the following. 1, an annual amount called a profit participation from New Day, calculated based on the consolidated profitability of New Day Aluminium LLC, which is a management entity that consolidates the earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization of the Gramercy Refinery in Louisiana and the New Day in Jamaica relating to the bauxite mined at St. Anne Bauxite Company. The profit participation was 17.33% of EBITDA. So the greater of that and $1.50 US per shipped dry metric ton of bauxite produced by the St. Anne Bauxite Company and shipped overseas. In addition, there's a royalty payable to the Government of Jamaica of US 50 cents per dry metric ton of bauxite shipped. From the audited financial statements, New Day Aluminium LLC was profitable for the years 2016 to 2017. On that basis, the Government of Jamaica collected $10,717,214 in revenue for that period, representing the profit share or the profit participation due under the establishment agreement between both parties. In 2018, severe weather conditions adversely impacted the Gramercy Refinery in Louisiana, resulting in New Day Aluminium declaring massive losses. These losses continued at least until the year 2020, which is the last year for which audited financial statements are available at this time. Clearly, 2021 just ended a few weeks ago. As a result of these losses, no amounts related to profit share was collected. However, the alternative would have kicked in, which is the minimum $1.50 per ton shipped. In accordance with the establishment agreement, the Government of Jamaica received $6,582,943 United States dollars, with $9,940,416 United States dollars still outstanding, both amounts of which are in respect of the agreed minimum US $1.50 per dry metric ton of bauxite shipped in those years in which New Day Aluminium LLC experienced losses. Concord Resources Limited assumed ownership of the Noranda Bauxite Partners II on July 1, 2021. The new owners inherited almost $20 million in obligations owing to the government of Jamaica, including the $9,940,416 United States dollars outstanding for payment of the minimum US dollars $1.50 per dry metric ton payment. Concord Resources and the government of Jamaica have agreed on payment plans for different aspects of this US $20 million debt. And so far, Concord Resources have been meeting agreed payment schedules. Importantly, as part of the new agreement between Concord Resources Limited and the government of Jamaica, Noranda Bauxite Partners II was placed back on a bauxite production levy regime effective January 1st, 2022. I cannot give details on the just completed 2021 year until the audited financial statements are available. These statements should be available by the middle of 2022. Question 2. Would the Minister state what would have been the revenue for the period specified in Part 1 from the bauxite production levy had it been in effect? Based on information available up to September 2021 on the levels of bauxite mined and shipped by Noranda Bauxite Partners II over the period 2018 to 2021, and assuming that such production occurred under a full bauxite production levy regime, which is a speculative if, the amount that would have accrued as bauxite levy would have been $81,530,366 United States dollars. I caution, however, against inappropriate comparisons, as it is at least questionable, and some would say highly doubtful, that there would have been production and export of bauxite at and from Noranda Bauxite Partners II over this period at these levels with a full bauxite production levy regime in place.
Thank you, Minister. A couple of questions. First, could you indicate how much of the $20 million that is owed by the new owners, Concord Resources, how much of that has been paid, and what is the schedule for the payment of the balance of those funds? Could you also indicate whether other bauxite companies are still on this profit share agreement, or whether you have reverted to the bauxite levy for all of the other companies that are operating in Jamaica? And my observation would be, Minister, and I know my colleague from East Kingston will speak on this, when the government moved to the profit share arrangement, we raised significant concerns about it because of the inability of any government to really properly monitor and determine the kinds of profits that those multinational companies earn. And we felt it would have been harmful to the government to move from the levy to the profit share, which this data, even if you discount the 81 million, demonstrates that the government stood to earn a lot more from the levy than the profit share. And I think it's important to heed the experience, and certainly the member from East Kingston was one of those who spoke very strongly at the time about the movement to the profit share and the fact that the government of Jamaica would in fact lose more by this arrangement. And while I note your caution about trying to do an apples-to-apples comparison, again, I would say the data shows without a doubt that there is certainly more benefit to the government of Jamaica from the levy. It is easier to
go back to the levy.
Right, and it is clear to me, having now gone back to the levy, just implemented in January, that you yourself have come to that conclusion also.
Thank you, Member. The nature of these arrangements, as I said, were put in place with a binding letter of intent in 2016, followed by an establishment agreement in 2018. While that would have predated my entry into the cabinet, I do know that there were specific circumstances at the time. You remember what would have happened, what the persons who came to purchase that plant, the difficulty they inherited with the fire, certainly at the Louisiana plant earlier, and so forth. And while there would have been some debate about the regime that was put in place at that time, the precise reasons why, for the period that we are looking at, 2 of the years, or 1 of the 2020 certainly, there was no profit share, had nothing to do with understanding the accounting of a multinational operation. This was an entity with an operation in 2 countries, one here and one in Louisiana. So it wasn't any complicated operation. The simple fact is that there was a fire in Louisiana, in the plant, at the Gramercy plant in Louisiana, and it meant that they were unprofitable. The audited financial statements we receive, they're like any other audited financial statements. They're done by a multinational firm of auditors, and it's very easy to determine EBITDA. So this is not, I understand the concerns that were levied at the time, but those concerns that were levied, that's not what materialized. Let's be very clear about it. What materialized is that due to circumstances beyond the control of anyone in Jamaica, there was an event, a fire at the plant in Louisiana, which meant that the combined operation was not profitable. With respect to the amounts owing and how much has been paid, I believe of the $20 million that Concord Resources inherited as an obligation owing to the government of Jamaica so far, and that was just in July of 2021, I believe $4.4 million has so far been paid, and is a schedule for the remaining amounts to be paid. With respect to the best of my knowledge, this was the only case of a profit share arrangement in place, and it was unique. The unique nature of the circumstances is that you had an entity that was mining bauxite for the purpose of using all of it at their alumina plant, and so they wanted an integrated approach. With the case of other bauxite plants in Jamaica, again, or other alumina plants who sometimes sell bauxite, to the best of my understanding, they're selling not necessarily to any one single plant that they also co-own. So the circumstances haven't arisen where other entities have put forward proposals for profit sharing, and indeed, to the best of my knowledge, none exist.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I have some follow-up questions, but just to go back to the issue as to the other companies, there is one, Jamalco, that does not pay a bauxite levy. Unfortunately, it is now shut because of the fire. And it's my understanding that the government was thinking of moving towards a bauxite levy regime because it makes sense for them as well. So probably you can comment on that when you respond. But certainly we have not seen the positive flows from these regimes that are outside of the bauxite regime. The Jamalco is an income tax arrangement, but again it's based on profits, and invariably the companies are able to, I wouldn't use the word disguise, but we have not been seeing in their financials tremendous profits. So that's the first question. But Minister, I wanted to go back to Noranda, because Noranda and the government of Jamaica were involved in legal action in 2015, where an arbitration award was done against Noranda for outstanding payments. I think it was in the amount of about between 8 to 10 million US. I want to know whether or not that was settled, or is it a part of the arrangement now with Concord? And also, Minister, you are aware there are two revenue streams from the industry. You have royalties, or he probably should answer. Yes. Yes, because I want to ask some follow-up.
Just with respect to the first question, the Jamaica arrangement has a unique history, as you are well aware. That Jamaica is 45% owned by CAP, which in turn is 100% owned by the government of Jamaica. For that and other historical reasons, Jamaica has been on a different regime where the bauxite levy doesn't apply. Under the incorporation that is and you remember Jamaica is an unincorporated joint venture. Under the incorporation, that's a matter that arises, and we have to. There will be need to ensure consistent treatment. Incorporation in and of itself should not change the fundamental economics of an operation. Incorporation is to allow the parties involved to better enjoy the economic opportunity as well as risks from the production at the plant in Clarendon. But in and of itself, it should not disturb arrangements that have long been in place. But that's a separate matter altogether. I just wanted to bring in the historical context. Your question about there was that historical matter, and I believe as a part of the establishment agreement and a regularization, there was an agreement with certain amounts to be paid. I believe all obligations that Noranda Partners 2 had to the government of Jamaica at the time of the change of ownership have been encapsulated in this $20 million amount that I just mentioned, of which 4.4 has already been paid.
Well, so I'm particularly interested in that aspect because it did warrant us putting up a stern legal battle in London, and I believe that the principle that we were arguing was quite profound and need to be settled definitively. There are two revenue streams in relation to the bauxite alumina sector. You have royalties that are paid, and you have the bauxite levy. We tend to forget about the royalties. And I know it wasn't a specific question, but it relates. So perhaps, Minister, you could say to us today whether or not all royalties have been paid. It's 50 cents per ton, and that there are no outstanding balances in relation to 50 US cents per ton, and that there are no outstanding balances in relation to both, not only Noranda, but all the companies. In fact, all the companies, whether it's Jamalco or Rusal, they have to, once they turn the soil, they have to pay the 50 cents. So that's one question. The second question relates to what my colleague asked earlier in relation to the other companies. What are the outstanding amounts there in relation to the bauxite companies, and if any, on the royalties? And I'd just like to ask two more questions after that.
With respect to the royalties, that's what I was focusing on when you're speaking. Okay, I have two things to respond to you on. With respect to the royalties, as at, I believe it was the middle of 2021, I don't have the up-to-date figures, the amount owed by that legal entity, which Concord assumed in July, on royalties, which is 50 cents a ton, was 1.769, I believe, million US dollars. And that excludes interest and penalties of approximately 0.26 million in addition, so 260,000. With respect to the legacy debt that was the subject of an arbitration proceedings, I believe the former owners of Noranda Bauxite Partners 2 paid $6.4 million of that amount. There's still some outstanding, which Concord has assumed and which forms part of the $20 million. But you should be pleased to know that the efforts of both administrations in that regard haven't gone in vain, and that the government of Jamaica has received $6.4 million US dollars resulting from those settlement payments. I can't speak to amounts owing for royalty by other bauxite companies. I didn't come here with that. I came here to answer the questions in my name with respect to Noranda Bauxite Partners 2. Yeah.
Minister, would the government consider changing the approach that has been standard for the last few decades in relation to how communities benefit from these revenue streams? There have been a lot of talk against the bauxite alumina sector. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that many of the communities don't see no benefits flowing to their communities. And yes, you have the JBI that administers the Community Development Fund. By the way, the royalties that are collected go straight to you. The communities don't benefit a dollar out of those. Sorry, yes, it goes straight to the Ministry of Finance. The communities don't benefit a dollar out of that. The bauxite levy is what is used from time to time, not all of it, in fact, a small amount of it that will go back to the parishes where mining, which is woefully inadequate. And that's one of the reasons why people are so opposed to the industry that has realized tremendous revenue streams. Would the minister and the government contemplate a different approach to enabling those revenues from the royalties and a significant portion now to be earmarked specifically for the parishes that have to endure the holes, that have to endure the discomfiture, and that don't see the benefits? So the minister would comment on that. And secondly, we have had the experience of having to grant concessions. When the price of aluminum is high, things are good. When the price of aluminum falls, people come, the bauxite companies. Can't we work out an arrangement where we abolish concessions, but to rework the formula so that it makes economic sense? Today, the price of aluminum will give you an above $11 per ton bauxite levy. And that is great, but my suspicion is that you're not going to be collecting $11 per ton, because they're going to be coming to you to say the price of oil has gone up, and so on and so forth. Put the levy at a rate. Once you turn the soil, then they pay it. If they don't want to pay it, they can take a break. But let the levy be so realistic that it guarantees the country a definite return to the country. And people can therefore see the benefits coming back to their communities from this industry that is depleting, that has created environmental issues, but for which I believe the country deserves far better in real returns to these communities. Would the government contemplate that?
Thank you, member. Those are thought-provoking questions. Let me first say, and just remind this House, that in the third supplementary estimates that were just passed last week, there was second supplementary estimates. Second. We had a line item called bauxite levy, for which there was $2 billion that wasn't there before. And due to the good work of the former minister, we collected $2 billion in bauxite levy in the last few months. Right? Now, with respect to your point about the support for the bauxite industry, or shall we say the evaporation of support of the bauxite industry being linked to the fact that the communities that are in close proximity of bauxite mining and production continue to be communities in need. I think that's an excellent point. And is the government prepared to address that? Absolutely, and that's something that we ought to do. As Minister of Finance and the Public Service, however, I would disagree with any formulaic earmarking. Earmarking often leads to wastage, and we, over the last couple of decades, we've seen many examples of it, that if you just specify that a certain block of funds must go to this place, then, people just end up spending it even if they don't have proper things to spend it on, and it goes astray. So I wouldn't agree, or not astray, it goes to waste, or it's spent inefficiently. So I wouldn't agree to earmarking. But I think what is absolutely necessary is that as the bauxite levy revenues come in, that a concerted effort is made to ensure that the communities from which this precious resource flows, that if there are needs with respect to water, that those needs are addressed. If there are needs with respect to education, they are addressed, and so forth. So that, I think, is absolutely a good point. There was something else that you mentioned.
I'll address it now. Minister, would the government contemplate establishing a committee comprising the parliamentarians who have to deal with the bauxite industry in their constituencies? I think it's important because, as you heard just now, the water needs are not being met. The various other infrastructural problems associated with industry. Pollution. And I tell you, it is fundamental. I agree, Prime Minister, that there should be no mining in the cockpit country. And I think you owe it to us to put that ban in order as soon as possible so that there will be no mining in the defined cockpit country. No. We are opposed to mining in the cockpit country. We are absolutely opposed. Right. But the point I'm making is that the Jamaican people, they are upset with the industry, not only because of the issue of cockpit country, but they are not seeing the real benefit. So if you could commit to establishing a committee of the parliamentarians who are directly affected, then it will satisfy my concern at this time.
So as I mentioned, member, the point that you made is often made on this side. In fact, there are members on this side who often speak to the very same issue, that bauxite is mined from the constituencies represented by government members, and they are at pains to point out from time to time that we need to accelerate how we address some of these needs. So the point is well made, and you're going to see, we can't solve these problems overnight, but you're going to see an effort made to accelerate the improvements. You had asked a question, you'd asked a question about concessions. And, right, okay, but concessions arise usually from at least two sources. You mentioned one, okay? And the one you mentioned is that market prices move in an adverse direction that puts bauxite companies under duress, and therefore they come for relief. Because remember, for all those who may be listening beyond this house, bauxite levy is levied on revenue, right? So the bauxite company is obligated to pay whether or not they make a profit. And that, for persons who are in business or have been in business, it's like a big version of a minimum business tax, that you owe it whether or not you make a profit. And that can be very challenging for persons in business and for persons in the mining industry. But the second reason why concessions often arise, or the request for concessions arise, is that companies say, look, we're going to make a massive investment. We're going to put in $100 million that is going to bring technology, and that's going to improve the operational efficiency of the alumina plant. It's going to drive costs down. But if we are expected to pay out of revenues even before we get our profit, then this investment is not going to be worthwhile. And governments, administrations, made up of members from opposition parties, right, and on this side have been in that familiar situation before. And the key is always, or the difficulty is always, or the challenge is, if a company comes with such a proposition, the assurances that can be put in place to make sure that that amount of investment is made. But there are times in the past where governments have, it has been prudent maybe, necessary probably, for there to be a meeting of the minds, no pun intended there, when a bauxite company is either under duress or needs to make a big capital investment, for there to be a variation. So I wouldn't want to have a definitive carte blanche law that would make it not feasible to implement concessions under circumstances for which they may be warranted. However, the question about updating the way in which the levy is applied is one that is well received, and I would say that the way in which the levy is applied changes over time for the very reasons that you mentioned. Okay, so I mean, and you asked the question because I think you're aware that a levy can be implemented in different ways depending on the circumstances. So, thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister, I'm reading your responses here. And the question I'd like to ask, the letter of intent that was entered into by the parties in 2016, did that formalize the profit arrangements so that Jamaica, the GOJ, could profit from that letter of intent? Because you indicated that the established agreement was entered into 2018, right? So did we get any revenue from 2016 to 2018 from that letter of intent? Because it is creating some challenges to me, to appreciate.
Sorry. Yes, ma'am. If you look at the statement, it says that in 2016 and 2017, the operation was profitable, and so the government collected $10.7 million as a result. Unfortunately, it wasn't I mentioned fire. Fire was the one in 2015 or thereabouts. In 2018, it wasn't a fire. It was severe weather events that adversely impacted Gramercy. But to answer your question, yes, the government did. The letter of intent that was signed in 2016 and had the profit share formula, the government collected in respect of those 2 years, 2016 and 2017.
Minister, just two questions really for information purposes. Just to understand, the $20 million that is owed, or that was owing when the new owners came in, Concord, in July last year. You've indicated that just under $10 million of that was the outstanding minimum $1.50 per ton payment that had accrued. And you indicated that royalty was somewhere in the region of $1.7 million. So I'm just asking, what is the composition of the other $8 or so million of that $20 million? That's the first question. What's the source of it? If it's not royalty and it's not the minimum payment of $1.50, which was applicable because it was making losses for most of those years. So that's one question. The other question I'm asking is, could you just clarify for the House, what is the current ownership arrangement of the mining operation on the North Coast conducted by Noranda? You know, we have this, we're hearing about Noranda Bauxite Partners 2, in which Concord Resources Limited is an owner. Is it the sole owner? The government of Jamaica, I believe, has a substantial equity stake in something. What is it that we own? And what is it that, how is the ownership of that mining operation, which really exports raw bauxite to Louisiana? What is the ownership arrangement for that?
Just in response to the first question, I was trying to pull up the table on my phone here. So when the ownership changed to Concord Resources, I mentioned that the Noranda Bauxite Partners 2 would have owed approximately $20 million to the government of Jamaica. And of that amount, I mentioned $9.9 million related to the $1.50 legacy fee, and approximately 1.7 million or there, about 1.769 related to the royalty, and then approximately 2.26 million related to the interest on the royalty. There's also an asset utilization fee for the Jamaica bauxite mining assets that are used, and that those assets cost a certain amount, and there's a arrangement where they would pay a certain amount each year for the use of those assets, and the amount owed for that was about $2.4 million. And then there are the legacy payments to which the member from East Kingston and Port Royal mentioned or referred to, and I said how much of those have been paid. But at the time, and by the way, those legacy payments relate to the, amounts of redundancy for hourly and monthly and temporary staff, as well as ID Industrial Disputes Tribunal payments and other payments. And those amounts amounted to about $6.4 million. So I think that adds up, roughly speaking. The JBML usage fee, the mineral royalty owing, the profit share owing, and then the legacy payments adds up to the 20 million. But they are, so far, as I said, they've made, since they took over in July, they have been honoring the payment schedule, and there's, let's hope that they continue to do so. The ownership structure of the, I think you're talking about the physical operation, is what we call the St. Anne Bauxite Company. That the physical operation, and the government of Jamaica owns, I think it's the same 51% that we owned all along, we still own. Is that 49% that has been changing hands. There was a Noranda 1, and then there's a bankruptcy, and then you got Noranda 2 Bauxite Partners, and now and Noranda 2 Bauxite Partners is owned by a company called New Day. Now, New Day no longer owns Noranda 2 Bauxite Company. It's now owned by a company called Concord Resources. But the government of Jamaica continues to have its 51% share.
Do we have a 51% just in the physical assets, or do we have a 51% share in the bauxite that's mined and exported, and the value of that when it is goes to whoever is using it to create alumina? What is the nature of our ownership? Is it, and what returns do we get from that 51%?
Yeah, so I think the government of Jamaica has a 51% share in a legal entity called St. Anne Bauxite Company Limited, and to the extent that that company is profitable, the government owns those shares. It has the, to use the expression, it has legal right to the residual profits of that entity.
No, I fully understand that. What I'm asking you to clarify for me is the role of that company in the overall operation in Jamaica. Is that the company that does the business of exporting the bauxite to Gramercy, or does that company just make assets available to another entity that is doing the actual mining business or contracting out the mining business and earning whatever revenue there's to derive from that bauxite? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that company owns the assets. It owns assets that are then used in the operation. And that is where the asset utilization fee comes in. So they use assets in their commercial operations and use those assets, export, earn the money from exporting, and they operate it. Okay, so we earn an asset utilization fee for providing the assets to their operation, and that's what our interest is in. No, we own the assets. We own, huh? Well, the business is, well, today it's Concord, but Concord owns Noranda Partners too, which does the business. Yeah. Everything in bauxite has historical legacy arrangements. You would know that.
Okay. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Public business. House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Under public business, we have 3 items. First, we will take the report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the motion for consideration of a proposal that the City Municipality of Portmore becomes the 15th parish of Jamaica. The second item will be taken by the Minister of Finance, the Stamp Duty Amendment of Appendices to Schedule Order 2021 Resolution. And the third item will be a report of the Special Select Committee to consider and report on private bills, an examination of the private bill shortly entitled The Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies Validation, Indemnification and Amendment Act 2021. So, Madam Speaker, the report will be presented by the Chairman of the Select Committee, MP for South Central St. Catherine, Dr. Andrew Wheatley. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member Wheatley.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I felt honored when I was asked to chair the Joint Select Committee to consider the proposal that the City Municipality of Portmore becomes the 15th parish of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, this honor stemmed not only from the fact that this was the era in which I first became a representative of the people as Councillor of the Nagwe Division, but also, Madam Speaker, because the potential of Portmore is unmatched in the Caribbean, and if I should say so, Madam Speaker, within the wider region of Latin America and the Caribbean. Madam Speaker, it is well known that I am not a sentimental man. But as myself and my colleague members of Parliament and senators went on the journey to examine the prospects of another parish being formed in Jamaica, it was as though we stood on the cups of something bigger than ourselves. Madam Speaker, over the course of 9 months, we listened to representatives of government agencies, the private sector, as well as from individuals. Persons, Madam Speaker, living within the municipality of Portmore, the wider Jamaica, and the diaspora. Madam Speaker, the debates were rigorous and sometimes partisan. but it is without a doubt that the general consensus is that Portmore should be designated the 15th parish in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, a parish was last named in Jamaica in 1867, when the country was under British rule, Madam Speaker. This, Madam Speaker, was done through an amendment of the Counties and Parishes Act 1867, which simply describes the existing parishes in Jamaica, Madam Speaker, and their names, as well as the capital for these parishes. Madam Speaker, discussions on the Portmore City Municipality being designated the 15th parish began prior to 2003. In 2003, Madam Speaker, the area was designated a municipality. Efforts to have Portmore named a parish began with the first mayor of Portmore, George Lee, who had worked assiduously along with others to advocate for Portmore to gain autonomy and self-governance. In fact, Madam Speaker, partial autonomy was granted in 2003 with the establishment of the Portmore Municipal Council, of which I was among the first set of elected councillors. Madam Speaker, former Prime Minister Bruce Golding and our current Prime Minister were also of the view that Portmore should become the 15th parish of Jamaica. In fact, Madam Speaker, our current Prime Minister indicated in 2020 that he envisaged Portmore as the first smart parish in the English-speaking Caribbean and Latin America. Madam Speaker, the size and special features of Portmore make it suitable to be a parish. Not only is it the largest dormitory community in the Caribbean, but its depth is firmly planted in the fact that the professionalism, Madam Speaker, and training of its residents make it unique and prime for further development. Madam Speaker, Portmore, though not perfect, has more amenities than many other already designated parishes in this country. Yes. Madam Speaker, the intention, as highlighted through the deliberations, is to structure future development of the area in a forward-thinking and sustainable manner. The result of this, Madam Speaker, will be the establishment of a model set of communities that will be the pride of place for all residents and the envy of others. Madam Speaker, Portmore has the potential to be the first smart or technology-driven area in this hemisphere. It cannot be questioned, Madam Speaker, that the skill set to help establish and to sustain such a place resides in this area that we call Portmore. Madam Speaker, the goal is to stimulate the innovative capacity which is inherent in all Jamaicans to become more than mere consumers of technology, but become more innovators of technology. Madam Speaker, the argument arose a few times during deliberations, and it would be remiss of me not to speak of it while I address this Parliament, Madam Speaker. The argument is that Portmore can become her best self without becoming a parish. Madam Speaker, time and time again, the response was, why not give the people and the place the status that they deserve? Is it the same reason, Madam Speaker, why people get married? Of course, one can live together into eternity, but for some, Madam Speaker, marriage is the icing on the cake. It is the formality that allows for benefits, comfort, and respect, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in 1969, when the first housing scheme was built in Portmore, Independent City, Who would have imagined that this area will now be at the stage to become a part of Jamaica's 15th parish? Madam Speaker, this honor has not been bestowed on any area in Jamaica for over 155 years. And based on the findings, Madam Speaker, of the Joint Select Committee, and as outlined in the report, which all members of the Houses of Parliament received months ago, it is recommended that the people of Portmore get an opportunity to manage their own affairs at the local government level, Madam Speaker. Being a parish, Portmore will be able to create and implement its own development plan, collect and utilize its own property taxes without the intervention of any other jurisdiction. In addition, Madam Speaker, the Sunshine City will enjoy a share of the parochial revenue fund to finance its plans. This access and independence, Madam Speaker, will lead to a more developed area. Can you imagine, Madam Speaker, like I have, a model smart parish where matters such as waste management, traffic control, security, outdoor spaces, and recreational infrastructure are all taken into consideration with technology as the cornerstone? Madam Speaker, in the 21st century, a modern parish cannot only strive to meet 20th century standards, but must reflect the age in which we live. Madam Speaker, we now live in the information age, the fourth industrial revolution, where data, information governance, and the digital economy are the cornerstones of a successful economy. Madam Speaker, I believe our Prime Minister, when he spoke to Portmore becoming the 15th parish, that was his thinking. Madam Speaker, our autonomous local authority under Portmore as a parish will create a framework for local and international entities to deploy their innovative solutions and use Portmore as their testbed. We will use this opportunity, Madam Speaker, to also learn what works, what should form part of policy. We can call this the Portmore sandbox, Madam Speaker, because we know for a fact, based on the demography of Portmore, that becoming a smart, technology-driven city is within grasp. Madam Speaker, this concept or this smart city approach will require a new type of thinking for local authorities and government alike. But, Madam Speaker, transforming Portmore into a parish gives us the opportunity and the permission to reframe our local authorities' implement policies. The freedom to be creative, Madam Speaker, the freedom to be innovative, the freedom to create that future for Portmore and, by extension, Jamaica. That is something, Madam Speaker, I believe that we can all agree on. That is something that we want to see in Portmore. Madam Speaker, as part of the deliberations, Madam Speaker, the Joint Select Committee held a number of virtual town halls. Madam Speaker, issues were raised and addressed. The matter of Portmore being a parish without a hospital was addressed. The matter of road and general infrastructure were addressed, as were matters, Madam Speaker, relating to cemeteries and water supply. Proudly, Madam Speaker, I can say that the addressing of these matters led not by any politician, but by technocrats from the relevant government agencies. In addition to addressing questions from citizens, the Joint Select Committee over the months sought to determine what were the features required for Portmore to be designated a parish, whether the requisite features already existed in Portmore, and if not, what were the requirements to enable it to qualify for parish status, whether or not Portmore should be granted the status of being Jamaica's 15th parish. These 3 questions were asked by ourselves and taking into consideration the submissions from the relevant government agencies, citizens of Portmore, and within the diaspora. Madam Speaker, the committee covered these 3 areas thoroughly and gathered even more information that could have been expected. Over the course of the 9 months, Madam Speaker, and with 40 meetings, the following major findings will be mentioned. First, Madam Speaker, there is no legislation, policy, or document which makes reference to the specific features of a parish. We learned, Madam Speaker, that Portmore was more populous than at least 8 other parishes, inclusive of St. Ann, and more populous, Madam Speaker, than Hanover and Trelawney combined. In fact, NEPA indicated that the population size of Portmore was expected to increase by some 2% annually. Madam Speaker, the number of development or building permits issued by an area was one of the factors used to measure development trends. And in fact, Madam Speaker, Portmore is ranked 3rd behind only St. Catherine and the Kingston and St. Andrew area. Madam Speaker, a major feature of most parishes was the designation of a capital, which is the administrative seat of local government. However, Madam Speaker, a specific location within a parish did not have to be designated as the capital, as seen in the case of the parish of Kingston, whose capital was designated as Kingston in the Counties and Parish Act of 1867. Madam Speaker, size did not preclude an area from being named as a parish. While Portmore will become the 2nd smallest parish in Jamaica, it will be larger than such states as the Vatican City, the Principality of Monaco, Tuvalu, the Republic of San Marino, and the Principality of Liechtenstein. Madam Speaker, the whole matter of the boundary for the proposed parish of Portmore has been raised. That, Madam Speaker, I'm sure will be addressed in the appropriate legislation or through ministerial order. Madam Speaker, road infrastructure and traffic management is of major concern within Portmore. Currently, Madam Speaker, over 95% of the roads fall under the purview of the Municipal Council. The 3 main corridors which serve Portmore have been included in the schedule of main roads by the National Works Agency for rehabilitation and maintenance. Madam Speaker, an additional 25 roads are to be gazetted as main roads and will be treated accordingly under the program of the National Works Agency. In fact, Madam Speaker, these 25 roads will be dualized as part of the effort to improve the flow of traffic within Portmore. Those of us, Madam Speaker, who are familiar with Portmore will easily recognize that a major concern of the citizens of Portmore is the entry and exit points in Portmore. That is something, Madam Speaker, that we need to address if we are serious about establishing Portmore as a parish. And I am very pleased, Madam Speaker, that this government is taking the matter seriously. In fact, Madam Speaker, a new overhead bridge and highway will be built in the vicinity of Caymanas, the entry point into Portmore from the Mandela Highway. This, Madam Speaker, based on studies done by the National Work Agency, will, Madam Speaker, significantly improve the flow of traffic in and out of Portmore, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I spoke earlier about rehabilitation of roads and the construction of this new entry point into Portmore. But we are going to ensure, Madam Speaker, that all rehabilitation of roadways within Portmore and entering into Portmore, that these roads will be built in such a manner that it will be able to support the technological infrastructure that will be needed to ensure that Portmore becomes a smart city, that Portmore becomes a smart parish. I am sure, Madam Speaker, that citizens within Portmore, outside of Portmore, are always concerned whenever they see roads being rehabilitated after waiting for some extended period of time, that soon after they are told someone from a utility company comes with a backhoe and starts to dig up those roads. We are going to ensure, Madam Speaker, that planning is done in such a concerted manner that access to those critical utilities will not adversely affect the structure of these roadways. That is the new approach, Madam Speaker, as we built out this new parish. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the fact that there is no legislation or policy which requires a parish to have a hospital, and in the case of Portmore, which has access to the Spanish Town Hospital in St. Catherine, hospitals in Kingston and St. Andrews, such as the Kingston Public Hospital, Madam Speaker, as well as 3 health centres within the municipality of Portmore, the concern of the citizens of Portmore have not fallen on deaf ears, Madam Speaker. In fact, Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister on a visit to Portmore last year gave the commitment for the construction of a new hospital in Portmore for the residents of Portmore. This new hospital, Madam Speaker, will complement the new model of health care, where the comprehensive health centres will be offering more specialist care, Madam Speaker, in relation to a wide range of diagnostic and therapeutic services. Patients, Madam Speaker, would have direct channel to primary care and would be able to access screening and diagnostic services without the need for a referral, Madam Speaker, to a hospital. Additionally, Madam Speaker, based on the range of services that would be offered, they would no longer need to seek certain types of care at the emergency department at such a facility. Madam Speaker, we looked also at the fire services. Portmore, Madam Speaker, in its entirety was served by one major fire station, the Waterford Fire Station, which, as it is now, Madam Speaker, is a substation under the St. Catherine Fire Department. However, Madam Speaker, residents of Portmore were all within a short distance of the fire station, especially as it relates to the distances that the fire services will have to travel in other parishes. In fact, Madam Speaker, the residents of Portmore are in closer proximity to a fire station than most persons living in other parishes within Jamaica. Notwithstanding that, Madam Speaker, it is being planned that the Waterford Fire Station will be provided with additional equipment to be able to expand its service, not only within the area of Portmore, but even assist in greater St. Catherine or other sections within St. Catherine, Madam Speaker. As relates to security services, Madam Speaker, similar to the existing parishes, there are several police stations in Portmore, Madam Speaker. In fact, Portmore has more police stations than Manchester, but has an equal number of stations as in other parishes such as St. Thomas. The parish court, Madam Speaker, we appreciate the fact that is a critical infrastructure. They are, in fact, features of existing parishes. Currently, the courthouse in Portmore is an outstation court, which also operates as a night court, Madam Speaker. it was suggested that this could be transformed into a parish court at an appropriate location if and when Portmore was established as the 15th parish. Madam Speaker, disaster risk management services. Like all other parishes in Jamaica, Madam Speaker, Portmore touches the sea and is exposed to various hydrometeorological events and hazards, such as flooding from severe weather-related events, wind damages from storm systems, and even earthquakes. Madam Speaker, there is a robust disaster risk management framework in this country of ours. And Madam Speaker, the Disaster Risk Management Act clearly sets out the role and responsibilities of parishes, as well as the establishment of parish disaster committee by the local authorities. And I must admit, Madam Speaker, that these parish disaster committees usually incorporate the services of the larger community, citizens within the community, whether through the Chamber of Commerce or any central group comprising or representing the citizens in any locality. Madam Speaker, the life of any community, the life of any parish is driven by economic activities. In fact, Madam Speaker, the economic lung of St. Catherine resides within Portmore as it is right now. If you looked at the lay of the land, especially within the area of Portmore, Madam Speaker, commercial activities, office use, makes up the greater part of financial activities. But Portmore, Madam Speaker, is unique in that it provides the opportunity to expand its earning potential. When Portmore becomes a parish, Madam Speaker, and I'm speaking in the future, Madam Speaker, that when Portmore becomes the 15th parish of Jamaica, Madam Speaker, it has the opportunity to expand its economic opportunities. Madam Speaker, tourism is prime for Portmore, Madam Speaker. Heritage tourism, Madam Speaker, is not only about sand, sea, and sun. Heritage tourism is something that, Madam Speaker, that we need to expand on in Portmore. We have mining and quarrying, Madam Speaker, which is a critical component of economic activity in Portmore. In fact, Madam Speaker, a large proportion of the workforce within Portmore, Madam Speaker, or a large proportion of the workforce that is employed within Jamaica comes from Portmore, Madam Speaker. Portmore is the pool that drives the public sector. Portmore is the pool that drives the private sector. But, Madam Speaker, we have to change how we do things. We have to get with the times, Madam Speaker, and develop activities within Portmore so that persons can stay in Portmore and do their business. And, Madam Speaker, the development of a smart city, a smart parish, will allow for that inherent capacity that resides in Portmore to be properly developed. Madam Speaker, solid waste management was a matter that was discussed. In fact, Madam Speaker, the National Solid Waste Management Authority is responsible for the collection, transportation, and final disposal of waste. This is similar to what occurs in the existing parishes, Madam Speaker. Garbage collections are done in Portmore as per the NSWME's collection schedule. In fact, Madam Speaker, the National Solid Waste Management Authority further advised that the modality and the efficiency of its collection will not be negatively impacted should Portmore be designated as the 15th parish. Madam Speaker, I will conclude by saying, Madam Speaker, that the matter of Portmore becoming the 15th parish is bigger than any of us, Madam Speaker. It's bigger than any individual. It is bigger than politics. The people of Portmore, Madam Speaker, deserve to be taken out of short pants and be put into long pants. The people of Portmore, Madam Speaker, deserves full autonomy, a chance to self-govern and pave their path in a technologically driven world. Madam Speaker, as we celebrate our 60th year of independence, let us give the communities of Portmore, such as Independence City, Waterford, Brayton, Elshire, Nagawed, Gregory Park, Newlands, Cumberland, West Cumberland, Westchester, Bridgeport, Garvin Mead, Edgewater, Portsmouth, Marine Park, Old Brayton, Madam Speaker, Greater Portmore, and even Port Tennessee Road, Madam Speaker. Full autonomy, Madam Speaker, full autonomy. Madam Speaker, the community in which I was raised, the Sunshine City, Madam Speaker, will and must become Jamaica's 15th parish. A fact, Madam Speaker, that should make us all proud. I thank you.
Madam Speaker. Yeah, Madam Speaker, I have indicated to the acting House Leader earlier on that I will make a contribution next week for which she concurred. So the understanding is that it opens now and it will close later.
For this evening's members, are there any other contributions to the debate for this evening? No? Very well. So we will suspend the debate. We will suspend. I understand, members, that we are suspending the debate for conclusion next week when other members will contribute. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The debate is therefore suspended until next week. House Leader, I think we're moving to the Minister of Finance, who will be taking the stamp resolution in relation to the stamp duty.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The matter for consideration by this Honourable House is the stamp duty amendment of appendices to Schedule Order 2021. And this order, Madam Speaker, is intended to amend the appendices of the Stamp Duty Act to effect changes to Appendix A as follows: to delete Part 1 of Appendix A, and to delete from Part 2 the list of prescribed goods and their corresponding additional stamp duty rates. And 3, insert in Part 2 the list of goods and the new additional stamp duty rates as outlined in Table 9. And B, delete from Appendix B Item 38 as well as soya oil from Item 7. Madam Speaker, Section 4 of the Stamp Duty Act allows the Minister of Finance to revoke, increase or alter any duty specified in the schedule to the Stamp Duty Act by way of an order subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives. Additionally, Section 30D, subsection 2 of the Act affirms this position specifically in respect of the appendices. Madam Speaker, during Jamaica's accession for membership to the World Trade Organization, WTO, in 1995, we submitted a schedule of commitment reflecting the maximum additional stamp duty rate the country would charge on both agricultural and non-agricultural imports. Jamaica at the time had very high rates on agricultural imports, and due to our classification as a developing country, the WTO agreement allowed for a transitional period to facilitate the reduction of those high rates. The transitional period has since elapsed, and Jamaica is still not compliant. In 2017, Jamaica had its trade policy review with the WTO, where member countries of the WTO questioned Jamaica's high additional stamp duty rates and inquired whether there was any consideration to reduce same. With an increased global scrutiny on the additional stamp duty, the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service has worked diligently on a systematic review of the additional stamp duty regime, which is still ongoing. The review, Madam Speaker, has revealed a number of additional stamp duty rates which had higher rates than our international commitment. And it is understood that the impact on the economy to fully correct these anomalies would be significant. Madam Speaker, recognizing that most of the non-compliant line items are agricultural products, we worked with the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries to determine the least sensitive lines to correct at this point. The intention is to conduct a further review in the future to bring the remaining lines into compliance. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, to give effect to the changes required to increase our WTO compliance, I ask for the affirmation by the House of the Stamp Duty Amendment of Appendices to Schedule Order 2021 and its accompanying resolution.
Madam Speaker, the only question I have for the Minister is what is the impact of these changes on revenue? From your statement, it sounds as if we are adjusting downwards, which would mean we would be losing revenue. So if you could give us an idea of what impact this would be to the Treasury of the adjustments.
Madam Speaker, these are additional stamp duty rates which were put in place originally to protect domestic suppliers and producers, but which run afoul of WTO conventions. And we got extra time as a country to reduce them. WTO came in and examined Jamaica's regime back in 2017, and we have no choice but to begin the regularization of some of these rates. The impact on revenue will be minimal in that the rates were designed to protect, i.e., they're set at such levels that it would be, as a matter of fact, domestic production would have been preferred. So the revenue impact is not going to be significant because where these high SDs exist, imports are very low in volume.
Madam Speaker, let me, as I listen to the Minister speaking about the adjustments to be made to the Stamp Duty Act, and that these adjustments is in compliance with WTO rules, I just want to make a note of caution. First of all, Minister, I think Jamaica needs to appreciate that the whole matter of the WTO and its implementation and its operations are again called into question. It's being called into question, Madam Speaker, by the very proponents of the WTO, United States and others. And we're going, it seems to me, since 2016, that we're going backwards rather than advancing in the way that the WTO was intended to do. What that has meant, Madam Speaker, is that the WTO has been rendered ineffectual in its dispute settlement mechanism, so that now today you can't get a dispute settlement going anywhere in the WTO because of the actions of some of the very countries that led the discussion and the arguments for the WTO in the first instance. What that means is, Madam Speaker, that even as we are being asked to lower the threshold and the barriers to trade on critical items, and it has been everywhere agreed in the developing world and with the developed world that the agricultural sector, which really addresses our ability to feed ourselves as a country and the matter of food security, is one of those areas, and perhaps the most sensitive of the areas, that we have to pay particular attention to. Minister, I will say to you, it's not by accident that this has been delayed in the way that it has, because it is indeed a very sensitive sector and having implications for our economy in a very direct way. And so, Minister, I certainly hope, I have not seen the adjustments that have been made, but I certainly hope that we have taken a very deliberate and a very sensible approach to this process, because to do otherwise would be to open up our sector and the agricultural sector at a time when the developed countries themselves are doing more to protect their agricultural sector. And I think Jamaica, as a member of the WTO, should be one of those countries arguing for the WTO, the whole issue surrounding the WTO and its functionality, its operation, to be looked into so that we as developing countries are not put at a competitive disadvantage, even as the proponents and the developed countries are acting in ways to reverse some of the liberalization process that has taken place. Minister, part of what I'm saying is I believe Jamaica needs to look at, in the context of what is happening in the WTO, to look at its whole trade policy regime. It really needs to look at it very urgently and very deliberately, because if not, we may find that we are giving up critical benefits and we are not getting the benefits of the membership of the WTO in return. So I want to sound that word of a note of caution, that we need to proceed very, very cautiously. And the fact that we are not in quote unquote compliance at this point in time should not be the only reason why we're doing this. I'm saying look at what is happening in the WTO, or put another way, what is not happening in the WTO, and look at our needs and look at the trade policy direction that I believe needs some examination in the current dispensation, including, I might add, Minister, a better understanding of how Jamaica in its trade policy can participate much better in the global supply chain and the value-added operation. I think we need to look and to recast that trade policy, but be very cautious about opening up the economy at a time when the developed countries seem to be reversing or retrenching on their commitment in the WTO.
Thank you for those comments. Let me just broaden the conversation a little bit. High additional stamp duty on goods can also make Jamaican domestic sectors uncompetitive. And one of the frequent complaints in the tourism sector, for instance, that has to cater to a wide range of guests, from the mass market all the way to the, to the affluent, to very discerning traveler, that a number of items that are on the consumption basket as you go along that spectrum are subject to very, very high rates of additional stamp duty. And in other countries that compete for the same market segments, those egregious rates don't exist, and therefore the service provider, the tourism service provider, can provide services at a lower cost and more competitive. So I wanted to throw that angle to it as well. Okay, there's also the domestic angle, clearly in areas where Jamaica is a producer, where these ASD rates have served as some kind of protection. But be that as it may, Jamaica is a part of a global community, and we came under, as all countries do, inspection by the WTO 4 years ago. So it's taken us that time to make these changes in 2017. And these inspections are peer review inspections. So other countries with whom you trade, with whom Jamaica trades, have a chance to examine our ASD regime and say, wait a minute, you have had 10, 15 years, come on, time to change. Now, or not change, time to update. Now, in updating, as I mentioned in my opening presentation, there has been serious consultation with the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. And the items that have been selected where the ASD has been moderated, we've chosen areas that are the least sensitive given our domestic makeup at the current time. And even areas where they're not sensitive, it's not a matter of ASD that's been abandoned, but it's just reducing the level of it. In some cases, you have ASD of 80% and 90% and so on, which make goods that Jamaicans are consuming more expensive. Okay, so I mean, so those ASD rates where we don't have, which are not sensitive to employment and production in Jamaica, those are the ones that have been selected. And it's not a matter of eradicating them and making them zero, but it's just bringing them down in line with international standards. And this review is ongoing. This won't be the last time that I would stand here to make these kind of changes. We're doing it in batches, the least sensitive first. And so the caution and the approach that you're advocating is the very approach that we're taking.
For contributions to the debate, may I invite the Minister to conclude and ask for.
I ask, Madam Speaker, that the resolution be approved.
Members, the question before the House is that the resolution be approved. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. The resolution is approved. House Leader?
Sure. Madam Speaker, the last item on the public business list is the report of the Special Select Committee to consider and report on private bills, an examination of the private bill shortly entitled The Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies, Validation, Indemnification and Amendment Act 2021. This will be presented by MP Holness, Deputy Speaker Holness.
Now calling on the Deputy House Speaker to open the debate and Chairman of the committee.
Thank you, Speaker. So the committee met as it relates to the private bill on the Sisters of Mercy in respect of amendments to the Sister of Mercies of Jamaica, British West Indies, which was incorporated and vested since 1954. It discussed provisions for the replacement of certain offices as established. The incorporation of the Sisters of Mercy on the 12th of April 1954 would have seen itself with a bill by which they continued operations over the many years. In the original bill, offices were delineated by naming specific individuals and specific offices. As we can imagine, over the many years, many of those individuals died. However, their positions remain, and they continue to perform the necessary operations of managing the organization, of, in good faith, doing what any charitable organization would do, receiving donations, issuing donations, entering into certain contracts for goods and services, contracts of employment, and literally, in their estimation, in good faith, running the organization over the many years. They have approached the House to put in place the necessary amendments that would both ratify the operations over the years and to ensure that they are properly vested in law going forward. So the debate really has all members unanimously in the committee feeling comfortable that the Sisters of Mercy operated correctly over the period, standard operations, and we were comfortable in being in a place that we would go forward with making the necessary amendments to vest in law new offices. We pointed out specifically to them that it would be prudent not to name specific individuals or personalities going forward, but to establish offices that would be occupied by any individual. So in the first iteration, they are going to be required, in order to vote within their organization, naming specific individuals to various positions, that being Sister Susan RSM, their area administrator, Sister Benedict Chung, RSM, for Secretary of the Sister of Mercy of Jamaica, Sister Jane Hotstream, and several others, Sister Mary Rose, all individually named, Sister Patricia McDermott, all individually named at this point in time. Once the amendments to this bill has been passed, along with, I'll say, Speaker, when we go to committee stage, 3 minor amendments just for corrections to the bill that we reviewed, then the Sisters of Mercy will be going forward being confident that we have ratified and made possible the confirmation that their operations, as it relates to property, as it relates to administration and management, as it relates to their continuing to receive and issue donations and operate generally, is in good standing. Once this has been done and the necessary votes have been taken internally, they will in fact come back to the House to have one last amendment to the bill, which establishes only functions and not necessarily individuals to take the organization forward into perpetuity. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm not sure if there's anyone else who would like to contribute.
Just for the record, as was said earlier, Madam Speaker, there is no difference of opinion in terms of the bill that is before us, having been the subject of a joint select committee and the agreement of everyone there. In addition to what the member noted, I also know that there was a suggestion that they could also come back and seek not to be a statutory body corporate as well, for something for them to consider. So we look forward to passing the bill and to ensure that the Sisters of Mercy continue to do the work that they have been doing in Jamaica.
Chairman, so House Leader, we'll now resolve ourselves. Chairman, am I correct? Chairman, will we now resolve ourselves into a committee of the whole House?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
The House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause.
Madam Speaker, may I ask that the House approve the report before we break into committee, at which stage we will consider the bill clause by clause.
Members, the question is that the report of the Special Select Committee on private bills on its examination of a bill shortly entitled The Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies Validation, Indemnification and Amendment Act 2021 be adopted. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. The House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the clauses of the bill. Members, I now put clause 1. Those in favour? Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
There is a minor amendment to clause 1 to delete the number 2021 and submit instead or substitute instead the number 2022. This is because at the time of consideration we thought we would have had this bill ready for adoption closer to the end of last year. So one small amendment to make the correction to clause 1 dated 2022 instead.
Members, the question before the House that there is an amendment to delete clause 21 and substitute clause 2022 instead. Those the year 2021. Those in favour?
So Speaker, the amendment is to remove the year 2021 and substitute with the year 2022.
22. So the amendment, therefore, with that is to delete the year 2021 and instead substitute 2022. Those in favour?
Correct, Chairman.
The ayes have it. I now put clause 2, and there's an amendment.
Clause 2 requires that we delete clause 2 and substitute, therefore, the following. So section 3 of the Principal Act is being amended, and it was tidied up in a way to allow for the amendment to be split between clauses 2 and clause 3 in the following way. Clause 2, section 3 of the Principal Act is amended by deleting subsection 1 and substituting therefore the following. The following persons, and was previously listed: Sister Susan Fraser, RSM, Area Administrator, Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies. B, Sister Benedict Chong, RSM, Secretary, Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies. And Sister Jane Hotstream, RSM, Sister Mary Rose Bumpus, RSM, Sister Patricia McDermott, RSM, being 3 members of the Institute of the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas, appointed by the President of the Institute of Sisters of Mercy of Americas to serve as members of the corporation, and their successors for the time being in their respective offices of Area Administrator, Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies, Secretary, Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies, and any 3 members of the Institute of Sisters of Mercy of the Americas appointed by the President of the Institute of Sisters of Mercy of the Americas from time to time to serve as members of the corporation are hereby declared constituted and appointed a corporation or body corporate to have continuance forever by the name of Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies, and possessed of a corporate seal, and by that name may sue and be sued in all courts in Jamaica. And section B of said clause, by deleting subsection 4 and substituting therefore the following: 4. Unless its bylaws shall otherwise provide, no deed or document purporting to be executed by the corporation shall be of any force or validity unless it is sealed with the corporate seal and signed by no less than 3 members of the corporation. Here end the amendment.
Chairman, am I understanding therefore that we are deleting clause 3 and amending clause 2 to include the provisions of clause 3?
Absolutely. And the deletion of clause 3 now is the 3rd amendment. So we'll take previous clause 3 after. So yes, clause 3 is being deleted. Clause 2 actually replaces clause 3, and we'll vote on that. And then our next amendment would be the full deletion of what was previously clause 3 and renumbering of the bill to facilitate the removal of that previous clause.
Member, the question before the House, therefore, is that the amendment is to delete clause 3 and amend clause 2 to include the provisions of clause 3. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Chairman. And finally, our clause 3 as previously included to be deleted and renumbering all the continuing clauses accordingly so that it follows sequentially.
The question before the House is that clause 3 be deleted, renumbered, and all the other clauses be renumbered consequentially. Those in favor? Aye. The ayes have it. We therefore have how many amendments? 4 amendments. Three amendments.
And if it is okay with you, Speaker,
yes,
we
go
could
ahead.
put clause 4 all the way through to clause 9.
I know the clauses, clause 4 through to clause 9. Those in favor? Aye. The ayes have it. I now put the preamble to the bill. Those in favor? Aye. The ayes have it. I put the title and the enacting clause. Those in favor? Aye. The ayes. Those against? The ayes have it. Members, the question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage with 3 amendments. Is those in favor? Aye. The ayes have it. Members of the House, I now formally report the bill as having passed committee stage with 3 amendments.
Madam Speaker, I now move that the bill be read a 3rd time.
Members, those in favor? Those against? The clerk will read the bill 3rd time.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies Incorporation and Vesting Law 1954 to make provision for the replacement of the offices which constitute the Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies, to make provision for the Sisters of Mercies of Jamaica, British West Indies, to be conferred with express powers to govern its management and administration, and to validate and indemnify acts carried out by the Sisters of Mercies of Jamaica, British West Indies, in good faith during the period commencing on the 12th day of April 1954 and ending on the date of commencement of this act. Read a 3rd time and passed.
Madam Speaker, there being no further business, I now ask that this honourable House be adjourned for a date to be fixed. But I would like to indicate it's possible that we may be back next week, but once the notice is sent out, I'm asking all members to be in Parliament prior to the 2 p.m. start so we can start promptly as we did today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Just before I close the sitting of the House, this is just to confirm we are starting Parliament at 2 p.m. whenever the House resumes. And members, we have done work today and we are concluding the session at 5 minutes past 5 because we started properly at 2. The country, the people of Jamaica are looking to see the commitment we have to the work being done. Let us start properly. The session of Parliament, the sitting of the House is now adjourned until a date to be announced. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. This House is now adjourned.